What if the other nuns in your monastery thought you were crazy? What if they mocked you, despised you, called you a fanatic just for praying? One young nun faced exactly that. But what a visiting priest saw in his vision would change everything, not just for her, but for the entire convent. A nobleman had several daughters. When it came time to place one of them in religious life, he chose a monastery. But this wasn't a holy, devout convent filled with prayer and sacrifice. This was what's called a Lax Monastery, a place where the nuns were concerned only with vanity and pleasures. They wore the habit, they lived in the convent, but their hearts were far from God. Their days were filled with worldly pursuits, gossip, entertainment, and everything except genuine prayer. But God had a plan for this monastery, and it started with their confessor, a zealous priest with great devotion to the Holy Rosary. When the nobleman's daughter arrived, this priest saw an opportunity. He could see the spiritual danger she was in, surrounded by nuns who had abandoned their vows in everything but name. He wanted to guide her into a better way of life. So he gave her a simple instruction: say the Rosary every day in honor of the Blessed Virgin, while meditating on the life, passion, and glory of Jesus Christ. That's it. No complicated spiritual exercises. No lengthy penances. Just the Rosary, prayed daily with meditation on Christ. And something remarkable happened. She joyously undertook this devotion. Not grudgingly. Not out of mere obedience. Joyously. She wanted to pray the Rosary. And as she prayed it day after day, something began to change inside her. Little by little, she grew to have a repugnance for the wayward habits of her sisters in religion. The things that used to seem normal, the vanity, the gossip, the worldly entertainment now felt wrong to her. She developed a love of silence and prayer. In a monastery filled with noise and distraction, she craved quiet time with God. But the other nuns didn't appreciate her transformation. In fact, they despised and ridiculed her. They called her a fanatic. Look at Sister So-and-so with her rosary beads, thinking she's holier than everyone else. They mocked her silence. They made fun of her prayer. They did everything they could to make her feel isolated and strange. Imagine being in that situation. You're trying to grow closer to God, and your own sisters in religious life are treating you like you're crazy. Most people would give up. Most would conform to the group, but this young nun persevered. Then something happened that nobody expected. A holy priest came to make the visitation of the convent, basically an official inspection to see how things were going. During his time there, while he was in meditation, he had a strange and powerful vision. He saw the young nun in her room. She was wrapped in prayer, kneeling in front of a lady of great beauty. This lady was surrounded by angels, not peaceful, gentle angels with harps. These angels had flaming spears, and they were using those spears to repel a crowd of devils who desperately wanted to come into the room. The demons couldn't get in. Every time they tried to approach this praying nun, the angels drove them back with those burning weapons. So the devils gave up on her room and fled to find easier targets. And where did they go? To the other nuns' rooms, entering under the guise of vile animals. The priest watched in horror as these demonic spirits freely entered the rooms of all the other nuns who had been mocking and ridiculing the one faithful sister. While she was protected by angels with flaming spears, they were hosting demons in the form of vile beasts. By this vision, the priest became aware of the lamentable state of that monastery. The spiritual reality was far worse than he'd imagined. He was so upset that he thought he might die of grief. This wasn't just a lax monastery, this was a place where demons had taken up residence while the nuns lived in complete oblivion to the danger they were in. He sent for the young religious and exhorted her to persevere. He told her what he'd seen, that angels were protecting her, that her faithfulness mattered, that she must not give up no matter how much the others mocked her. Then he pondered what to do about the rest of the monastery. He could command them to reform. He could threaten them with discipline. He could force them to change their ways. But as he thought about the value of the Rosary and what it had done for this one nun, he decided to try a different approach. He bought a supply of beautiful rosaries, not cheap ones, but genuinely lovely prayer beads that anyone would be happy to own. He gave one to each nun, and then he made them an offer that probably surprised them. He implored them to say the Rosary every day. But here's the key: he promised them that if they would only say it faithfully, he would not try to force them to alter their lives. No commands to change, no threats, no discipline. Just pray the rosary and he'd leave them alone. Wonderful and strange though it may seem, the nuns willingly accepted the rosaries and promised to say the prayer on that condition. They probably thought they were getting away with something. Fine. We'll mumble through some Hail Marys if it means he'll stop bothering us about reforming. But the rosary doesn't work that way. You can't pray it regularly without it changing you. Little by little, they began to give up their empty and worldly pursuits. It wasn't forced, it wasn't commanded. It happened naturally as they prayed. Silence and recollection began to come into their lives. The vanity that had consumed them started to feel hollow. The pleasures they'd been chasing didn't satisfy anymore. And then came the miracle. In less than a year, less than 12 months, they all asked that the monastery be reformed. Every single one of them. The nuns who had mocked the faithful sister. The nuns whose rooms had been filled with demons. The nuns who had resisted any talk of change. They all came together and begged for the monastery to return to its proper religious observance. The rosary worked more changes in their hearts than the priest could have done by exhorting and commanding them. He could have preached 1,000 sermons. He could have threatened them with every ecclesiastical penalty. He could have forced external compliance, but none of that would have changed their hearts. The rosary changed their hearts. Prayer changed what commands couldn't. Daily meditation on the life, passion, and glory of Christ transformed them from the inside out. So what's the lesson for us? First, that faithful prayer matters even when you're alone. That young nun was surrounded by people who mocked her devotion, but she kept praying. And angels with flaming spears protected her because of it. Second, that the rosary protects us from demonic influence. The demons couldn't enter her room. They literally couldn't get past the angels who were there because of her prayer. When you pray the rosary daily, you're not just saying words, you're inviting heavenly protection. Third, that hearts change through prayer, not through force. The priest wisely understood that commanding change wouldn't work. But giving them rosaries and asking them to pray would transform them from within. And finally, that it's never too late for reform. That entire monastery had fallen into a terrible state. Demons were dwelling in the nuns' rooms. But within a year of praying the rosary, they all wanted to be reformed. No soul is too far gone, no situation is too corrupt. The rosary can change anything. So pick up your rosary, pray it daily, and don't be discouraged if others think you're a fanatic. Angels with flaming spears are real, and they surround those who pray faithfully.